When I first learned about RFID tracking in ammunition, I didn't believe it at first. But after seeing official documentation and reports from shipping companies like FedEx and UPS, as well as statements from ammunition manufacturers and federal agencies, it became clear that this is not a rumor or online conspiracy. This is happening right now, and it directly affects lawful gun owners like me and you. RFID, which stands for Radio Frequency Identification, has been around for decades, mostly used in logistics, warehousing, and retail inventory control. However, beginning in late 2024, several major players in the ammunition industry confirmed that they began implementing RFID tagging on ammo containers labeled as high-value inventory. According to statements filed through Verisk's CargoNet and federal logistics partners, the reason behind this move was a sharp increase in cargo theft between 2023 and 2024, where millions of rounds of ammunition disappeared during transport. Companies such as Federal Premium Ammunition, Remington, and Winchester acknowledged that they now include micro RFID stickers or chips on certain shipments, supposedly for tracking lost or stolen goods. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and U.S. military suppliers have also adopted similar technology for managing stockpiles and preventing diversion. While the stated purpose is security and traceability, it raises a much bigger concern. Who exactly has access to this tracking data, and how far can this surveillance extend into civilian ownership? As someone who believes in the Second Amendment and the right to privacy, I see this as a potential turning point. What began as a method for logistical control could quietly evolve into a tool for monitoring citizens, tracking firearm usage, and profiling lawful gun owners. That's why it matters, and that's why we need to talk about it. When we talk about RFID tracking, most people think of warehouse logistics or supply chain efficiency, not ammunition. But RFID, radio frequency identification, is a legitimate and widely used technology. It uses a small chip and antenna to transmit a signal to a reader, allowing inventory to be identified without direct contact. This system has existed for decades and is primarily used by the Department of Defense, major shipping companies, and manufacturers to track goods across the supply chain. In the defense sector, the U.S. Army's Joint Munitions Command, JMC, has used passive RFID labels on large containers and pallets of ammunition since the mid-2000s. The purpose is straightforward: to reduce losses and improve logistics visibility. A 2019 Government Accountability Office report confirmed that this program successfully helped prevent misplacement and ensured faster tracking of supplies within military depots. Importantly, these tags are not placed on individual rounds or boxes for civilian sale. They remain at the shipment and storage level. By 2024, private logistics companies such as FedEx and UPS began expanding RFID use across their global freight operations. These initiatives were focused on high-value goods like pharmaceuticals, electronics, and sensitive shipments, not necessarily ammunition. However, ammunition shipments sometimes fall into that sensitive cargo category, which means pallets of cartridges or components could occasionally carry an RFID tag for tracking during transport. While this practice improves security, there is currently no verified evidence that civilian ammunition boxes sold at retail are being tagged with RFID. RFID offers efficiency, but also introduces privacy concerns if used beyond its intended scope. If shipment-level tracking data were ever linked to retail sales databases, it could create an indirect chain of traceability. While such integration does not currently exist, it's a valid discussion for privacy advocates to ensure safeguards remain in place. This issue isn't about rejecting technology, it's about defining its limits before it's misused. So, who's really implementing RFID when it comes to ammunition? The answer is more limited and technical than many online discussions suggest. Based on public defense documents and logistics reports, only certain organizations currently use RFID within the ammunition supply chain, and mostly for inventory control at a bulk level, not for tracking consumers. First, the U.S. Department of Defense and its contractors, including Northrop Grumman and General Dynamics Ordnance, continue to use RFID according to MIL-STD 129 guidelines. These standards apply to pallets and containers of military ammunition moving through depots or overseas shipments. The goal is logistical accountability, not surveillance. Second, commercial shippers like FedEx and UPS employ RFID primarily for their general freight network. Their systems manage high-value and time-sensitive items, a category that may include ammunition if it's being shipped in large quantities or under contract. However, neither company has announced any public policy of tagging civilian ammunition separately or sharing RFID data with government entities. Third, ammunition manufacturers such as Remington, Winchester, and Federal Premium Ammunition currently rely on barcodes and QR codes for internal tracking. There are no confirmed public statements or patents indicating they've adopted RFID for consumer products. Their logistics systems are designed for warehouse management, not end-user monitoring. Fourth, while international organizations like the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, UNODA, and the European Union have explored marking and tracing standards for ammunition control, these refer to serial number identification, not RFID technology. In other words, the international effort focuses on marking ammunition for export control, not wireless tracking. Some U.S. states, such as California and New York, maintain strict ammunition purchase laws, but there are no legal provisions mandating RFID tagging for compliance. California Penal Code Section 30352, for example, governs background checks during ammo sales, yet makes no mention of RFID or digital identifiers. In short, RFID is real, but its use in ammunition is limited to military logistics and occasional commercial shipping, not a widespread system of tracking civilian gun owners. The concern should focus on future potential misuse, not a currently active surveillance network. Transparency, clear boundaries, and public oversight are what keep technology serving freedom rather than eroding it. When it comes to RFID and ammunition, the biggest question isn't just who's using it, but how far could this go under current law? As someone who supports both technological progress and constitutional freedom, I see this as a gray area where logistical innovation could, without clear limits, start brushing against privacy and Second Amendment rights. Let's start with what the law currently says. The Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Courts, particularly in landmark cases like District of Columbia v. Heller, 2008, and New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, 2022, have affirmed that the government cannot impose restrictions that effectively disarm law-abiding citizens or create undue burdens on firearms ownership. However, those decisions focused on guns, not ammunition tracking technology. The Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches, may also come into play if tracking data about private purchases or inventory were ever accessed without consent or probable cause. Under current U.S. law, there is no federal statute authorizing the tagging or electronic tracking of ammunition sold to civilians. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, regulates ammunition sales but only requires records for specific categories, such as armor-piercing rounds or imports and exports. There is no mention of RFID or data retention requirements related to consumer ammunition. That means, legally, any move toward electronic traceability would require new legislation or rulemaking, and such a proposal would almost certainly face constitutional challenges. From a state-level perspective, even strict jurisdictions like California, New York, and New Jersey have not introduced RFID mandates. Their laws focus on background checks and registration databases, not supply chain tracking. If any future program attempted to link RFID data to individual purchasers, it could raise serious legal concerns about unwarranted surveillance and data misuse. Courts could interpret that as a form of record-keeping that chills the exercise of constitutional rights. However, it's important to acknowledge that RFID itself is not illegal or inherently unconstitutional. Its application becomes problematic only if combined with personal data in a way that enables tracking of lawful citizens without due process. The line between legitimate logistics management and invasive monitoring is narrow, and it depends entirely on how data is stored, who controls it, and what safeguards are in place. So the challenge for both lawmakers and the 2A community is to ensure transparency, oversight, and voluntary limits before this technology expands further. We don't need to reject innovation, we just need to protect liberty from being quietly coded into obsolescence. Even though RFID and ammunition logistics is mainly a security tool today, it's worth discussing how real-world vulnerabilities can arise from its misuse. The same technology that keeps shipments secure can also become a liability if data is poorly protected or repurposed for unauthorized monitoring. Let's start with theft and data breaches. Between 2022 and 2024, there were multiple incidents of ammunition theft from warehouses and transport vehicles reported to CargoNet, a division of Verisk Analytics that tracks supply chain crime. In many cases, RFID tagging helped recover cargo faster because tags could be traced back through scanners and shipping records. That's a positive outcome. However, RFID systems rely on databases, and like any connected system, those databases can be hacked. If criminals gain access, they could identify which facilities are holding ammunition and when shipments are on the move, effectively turning a security tool into a roadmap for theft.
Another concern is data sharing and third-party access. When RFID data passes through multiple networks, from manufacturers to shippers to distributors, it creates several potential access points. If not properly restricted, this data could be sold, subpoenaed, or cross-referenced with unrelated databases. For example, shipment logs combined with retail data could theoretically build a pattern of where ammunition is flowing, even if unintentionally. While such integration isn't happening now, it's a vulnerability that exists in principle. There's also a technological blind spot. Many RFID tags operate on unencrypted radio frequencies, meaning they can be read by anyone with the right equipment. Although passive RFID has short range, typically under 10 feet, someone with a directional antenna could still scan tagged pallets at close distance. For civilian ammo storage or gun shops, that could expose inventory data without the owner ever realizing it. To be clear, none of this means RFID is inherently dangerous, but it does mean transparency matters. Private companies should disclose when and how they use RFID for ammunition logistics, and customers should have a right to know whether their purchases are being logged beyond standard shipping records. Accountability, not alarmism, is what ensures that technology designed for safety doesn't evolve into a tool of surveillance. As a gun owner and supporter of the Second Amendment, I don't see technology as the enemy. I see complacency as the real threat. RFID, like any tool, can be used for good or for control, depending on how we regulate and monitor its use. That's why awareness among responsible citizens matters. The first step is understanding the scope. Right now, RFID in ammunition is primarily logistical, not personal. But that doesn't mean the discussion ends here. Technology evolves quickly, and policies can change quietly. Staying informed, reading new ATF rule proposals, state bills, and international agreements is essential for anyone who values both security and freedom. Second, the firearms community should push for transparency and voluntary standards before regulations are imposed from above. Ammo manufacturers and shippers can help by clearly labeling RFID use and publishing privacy policies that explain what data is collected, who has access, and how long it's retained. Third, we should focus on advocacy through lawful channels. Supporting organizations that defend privacy rights and the Second Amendment, whether at the state or federal level, ensures these issues stay visible in public debate. Responsible ownership means more than safe handling. It means safeguarding the principles that make ownership possible. Finally, this isn't about fear. It's about balance, using technology to improve safety and logistics while demanding the oversight that prevents abuse. As citizens, we have a duty to stay vigilant, not paranoid. Because once surveillance becomes normalized, reclaiming privacy is nearly impossible. The time to ensure that balance is now, while the system is still in our hands.